The whip cracked against Kestrel's back for the third time that morning, but he didn't flinch. Blood seeped through his torn shirt as he continued mucking the stalls, his jaw clenched tight against the pain. Behind him, Cornelius Ashworth's boots scraped against the barn floor, searching for another reason to strike. "You missed a spot, boy," Ashworth snarled, raising the leather again. "Father, stop." The voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Renlow Ashworth stood in the barn doorway, her copper hair catching the golden light, her green eyes blazing with fury. She wore a simple blue dress, but carried herself like a queen facing down a tyrant. "This doesn't concern you, daughter," Cornelius growled, not lowering his weapon. "It concerns me when you're beating an innocent man half to death." "Ah!" Renlow stepped between them, her chin raised defiantly. "Kestrel works harder than any 3 men combined. He doesn't deserve this." Kestrel's heart hammered against his ribs, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. For 2 years he'd watched Renlow from afar, admiring her kindness to the servants, her gentle way with the horses, the fire in her spirit that no amount of wealth and privilege could dim. But he was nothing a ranch hand with calloused palms and patched clothes, while she was the daughter of the richest landowner in 3 counties. "Step aside, Renlow," her father commanded. "No." The word rang with absolute finality. Cornelius's face purpled with rage. "Forget yourself, girl. This man is my property, just like everything else on this ranch, including you." "I'm not your property," Renlow shot back. "And neither is he." The whip whistled through the air, but not toward Kestrel. Cornelius aimed for his daughter's face, intent on teaching her a lesson about defiance. A crawl as Kestrel saw the leather streaking toward Renlow's delicate features. He moved without thinking, launching himself forward and catching the whip mid-strike. The leather wrapped around his forearm, cutting deep, but he held fast. With his free hand, he grabbed Cornelius by the throat and slammed him against the barn wall. "Touch her," Kestrel said, his voice deadly quiet, "and I'll kill you." Cornelius's eyes went wide with shock and something else, fear. In all his years of owning men's bodies and souls, he'd never seen such raw, protective fury. "You've done it now, boy," Cornelius wheezed. "I'll have you hanged for laying hands on me." "Let him go, Kestrel." Renlow's voice was soft but urgent. "Please." Kestrel's grip loosened, but his eyes never left Cornelius's face. "Your daughter showed me more kindness in 2 minutes than you've shown anyone in your entire miserable life. If you ever raise a hand to her again, there won't be enough of you left to hang." He released the older man, who stumbled and fell to his knees, gasping. Renlow rushed to Kestrel's side, her fingers gentle as she examined his wounded arm. "You're hurt," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "Shh, it's nothing," he said, though his arm felt like it was on fire. "It's not nothing." She looked up at him, and he saw something in her gaze that made his breath catch. Not gratitude or pity, but something deeper, fiercer. "You protected me." "I'd do it again," he said simply. Cornelius struggled to his feet, his face twisted with hatred. "Guards," they bellowed, "seize this man." Within seconds, 4 armed men burst into the barn. Kestrel stepped protectively in front of Renlow as the guards advanced, their hands on their pistols. "Step away from Miss Ashworth," the lead guard commanded. "Don't you dare," Renlow said fiercely, moving to stand beside Kestrel. "This man has done nothing wrong." "He assaulted your father," the guard replied. "That's a hanging offense." Cornelius straightened his clothes, his dignity slowly returning. "Chain him up in the cellar. I'll decide his fate after I've had time to think." "You will not," Renlow declared. To everyone's amazement, she pulled a small derringer from her skirt pocket, pointing it steadily at her father. "Kestrel saved my life. I won't let you murder him for it." "Renlow," Kestrel said softly, "put the gun down. This will only make things worse." "Worse?" She laughed bitterly. "He was about to strike me, his own daughter. You stopped him. If that's a crime, then justice is dead in this county." Cornelius's face had gone from red to white. "Where did you get that weapon?" "From your own desk drawer." "I've been planning to leave this place for months. Today just moved up my timeline." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "I'm 22 years old, Father. You can't control me forever." "My daughter, you'll do as I say." "No," she said simply. I won't. The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. The guards looked uncertain, unwilling to shoot their employer's daughter, but equally unwilling to disobey orders. Cornelius's jaw worked soundlessly, rage and shock. Warring across his features, that's when Kestrel acted. In one fluid motion, swept Renlo into his arms and dove sideways into an empty stall. The guards shouted and rushed forward, but Kestrel was already moving, carrying Renlo toward the back of the barn where a window stood open. The horses, Renlo gasped, understanding immediately. Two saddled mounts waited, just outside Sheed, prepared for this moment longer than anyone realized. Kestrel boosted her up onto a sleek bay mare, then swung onto a powerful black gelding. Behind them, shouts erupted as the guards scrambled for their own horses. Can you ride? Kestrel asked, though he already knew the answer. He'd watched her race across the meadows countless times, moving like she was born in the saddle. Better than you can, she said, with a grin that made his heart skip. Follow me. They thundered out of the yard as the first shots rang out behind them. Renlo led them not toward the main road, but into the maze of canyons and arroyos that crisscrossed her father's vast holdings. She knew every hidden trail, every secret passage through the red rock formations. Where are we going? Kestrel shouted. Over the pounding hooves. Sanctuary, she called back. Aye! My grandmother's cabin. They rode hard for an hour, the pursuit growing fainter with each mile. Finally, Renlo guided them up a narrow canyon to a small log cabin nestled beneath towering pine trees. A crystal stream bubbled nearby, and wildflowers carpeted the meadow around the dwelling. My grandmother left this to me, Renlo explained as they dismounted. Father never comes here, too many memories of mother. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, with hand-woven rugs and furniture carved from local timber. Renlo immediately began tending to Kestrel's wounds, washing the whip cuts with cool water and binding them with strips torn from a clean sheet. Why? He asked quietly as she worked. Why risk everything for me? Her hands stilled for a moment, then resumed their gentle ministrations. Because you're the first person who ever stood up to him. Because you protected me without expecting anything in return. Because ... She looked up into his eyes. Because I've been watching you for 2 years, and I've never seen you be cruel to any living thing. Not once, Renlo, he said softly. You don't understand what you've given up. Your inheritance, your position. I've given up a prison, she interrupted, and gained my freedom. Dawn broke over the canyon rim, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Kestrel woke to find Renlo already up, standing at the window with a cup of coffee in her hands. She'd braided her copper hair back and changed into riding pants and boots, practical clothes that made her look even more beautiful than her fancy dresses ever had. They're coming, she said quietly. In the distance, a dust cloud marked the approach of riders. Kestrel counted at least 8 horses, maybe more. My father doesn't give up easily, Renlo continued. He'll have sent every man he can spare. Kestrel rose and moved to stand beside her. Can't outrun them forever. Not with their numbers. I know. She turned to face him, her green eyes serious but unafraid. There's something you should know about why my father is so determined to bring me back. Tell me. He's arranged a marriage to Bartholomew Crane, the railroad baron's son. The wedding is set for next month. She set down her coffee cup with a sharp click. The dowry alone would make father the richest man in the territory. Kestrel's jaw tightened. He'd heard of Crane, a cruel man who'd already buried 2 wives under suspicious circumstances. The thought of Renlo in his hands made Kestrel's blood run cold. We'll find a way out of this, he promised. Will we? She moved closer, so close he could smell the wildflower scent in her hair. Even if we escape, what then? I'm not exactly equipped for a life on the run. You're stronger than you know, he said, fighting the urge to pull her into his arms. But I won't lie to you. It would be a hard life. No comforts, no security, no chains, she added softly. I'll take uncertainty over captivity any day. The sound of approaching hoofbeats grew louder. Through the window they could see the riders spreading out to surround the cabin. Cornelius himself led the group, his face a mask of cold fury. Renlo called out, I know you're in there. Come out now, and I'll be lenient with your ... friend. He's lying, Renlo said. I know. Kestrel moved to the gun rack on the wall, selecting a well-maintained rifle. How many shells? Enough for a fight, not enough for a siege. Outside. Cornelius was growing impatient. You have 1 minute to show yourself, daughter. After that, we come in shooting. Renlo checked the loads in her derringer, then picked up a second pistol from a drawer. My grandmother always said this place was built to be defended. The windows are small and high, and there's only one door. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She also said something else, that love without courage is just pretty words, but courage without love is just violence. Renlo looked at him steadily. I love you, Kestrel Thorne. I've loved you since the day you spent your own wages to buy medicine for that sick horse, even though you barely had enough to eat. His rifle nearly slipped from his hands.
That's Renlo?
Don't say it's impossible because of who we are, she interrupted. Don't say it's foolish or impractical. Just tell me, do you love me too? More than my own life, he said without hesitation. That's exactly why I can't let you throw everything away for me. Time's up. What? Cornelius roared. The first shot shattered the window. Kestrel pulled Renlo down behind the thick log walls as bullets whined overhead. He fired back, his shot taking down one of the attackers. 7 left, he muttered, working the rifle's bolt. 8, Renlo corrected, having spotted another rider. Father brought Crane with him. Through a gap in the shutters, Kestrel saw a well-dressed man on a white horse, hanging back from the main fight. Even at a distance, Bartholomew Crane radiated cruelty and arrogance. He wants to see his future bride in action, Kestrel said grimly. His future widow, more likely. Renlo replied, taking aim with her pistol. The battle intensified. The attackers tried rushing the door, but the narrow approach forced them to come in single file, making them easy targets. Still, Kestrel knew they couldn't hold out indefinitely. Their ammunition was limited, and Cornelius had enough men to simply wait them out. That's when the unexpected happened. A new group of riders crested the canyon rim. But these weren't Ashworth's men. They wore the badges of federal marshals, and their leader carried a warrant high over his head. Cornelius Ashworth, the marshal shouted. You're under arrest for illegal detention and forced labor. The gunfire ceased abruptly as confusion rippled. Through Ashworth's men, federal marshals poured down the canyon walls like an avenging flood, their weapons trained on the would-be attackers. Cornelius sat frozen on his horse, his face cycling through shock, rage, and fear. Marshal Tobias Ironwood, a weathered man with steel-gray hair and eyes to match, rode straight to the cabin door. Miss Ashworth, Mr. Thorne, you can come out safely now. Kestrel and Renlo exchanged glances. How did a federal marshal know their names? They emerged cautiously, weapons still ready. Ironwood dismounted and touched his hat brim respectfully. To Renlo. Ma'am, we've been investigating your father's operation for the better part of a year. Your escape yesterday was the final piece we needed. I don't understand, Renlo said. Your father's been running an illegal labor camp, miss. Men working without wages, held by debt and violence. That's slavery, plain and simple, and it violates federal law. Ironwood's eyes were hard as flint. We have statements from 36 witnesses. Kestrel felt the world tilt around him. Witnesses.
Oh.
Men who escaped over the years. They all told the same story. Brutal conditions, no pay, and anyone who complained got the whip or worse. The marshal's gaze found Kestrel. Including you. Son, Decker, Rawlings, sends his regards. The name hit Kestrel like a thunderbolt. Decker had been his bunkmate 3 years ago, before he'd vanished one night. Cornelius claimed he'd stolen money and run off, but Kestrel had never believed it. Decker's alive? Alive and working as a government informant? He's been tracking your father's activities, waiting for the right moment to strike. I gestured toward the surrounded riders. That moment is now. Cornelius finally found his voice. This is preposterous. These men work for me voluntarily, at gunpoint, Ironwood asked mildly. With whips and chains? Funny definition of voluntary, Ashworth? I demand to see your warrant, Ironwood produced. A document from his coat, signed by a federal judge in Denver, You're charged with operating an illegal labor camp, assault, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. Your friend Crane there is also wanted for questioning about similar operations on his railroad. Bartholomew Crane had gone pale as parchment. Without warning, he spurred his horse and tried to flee, but 2 marshals were on him instantly. Hit the ground hard, his fine clothes torn and dirty. Coward, Renlo said with disgust. As the marshals shackled Cornelius, he turned desperate eyes to his daughter. Renlo, you can't let them do this. I'm your father. You were never a father. She replied, her voice steady as granite. Fathers protect their children. They don't sell them to the highest bidder. Everything I did was for you. For our family. No, she said softly. Everything you did was for yourself. Marshal Ironwood approached them again. I'm afraid you'll both need to testify at the trial. But that won't be for several months, and there's no reason you can't travel freely until then. What about the ranch? Enloe asked. It'll be sold to pay restitution to your father's victims. I'm sorry, miss, but there's nothing left. Straightened her shoulders. Good. I never want to see that place again. As the marshals led their prisoners away, Kestrel and Renlo found themselves alone in the canyon once more. The silence felt different now, not the tense quiet of hiding, but the peaceful stillness of freedom. Where will you go? Kestrel asked. Was hoping you'd tell me where we should go, she replied, moving closer to him. She smiled, the same brave, beautiful smile that had stolen his heart 2 years ago. Did you think I was going to let you walk away now? After everything we've been through? Renlo, I have nothing to offer you. Shh. No money, no property. You have yourself, she interrupted, placing her hands on his chest. Your courage, your kindness, your strength. That's worth more than all my father's gold. It won't be easy, he warned, starting over with nothing. We won't have nothing, she said. We'll have each other. And we'll have our freedom. He cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the trust in her eyes. Are you sure? Really sure? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Win! He kissed her. It felt like the first sunrise after a long, dark winter. Full of promise and possibility, warm with hope. So, she said, when they broke apart, where should we begin our new life? Kestrel thought of the wide-open spaces beyond the canyon, of towns where no one knew their names or their history, places where a man could make an honest living and a woman could speak her mind without fear, wherever the road takes us. He said, that sounds perfect. 3 weeks later, their wagon rolled along the dusty trail toward Colorado, everything they owned packed into the bed behind them. Kestrel had sold Renlo's jewelry, the few pieces she'd managed to grab during their escape, and bought supplies, a sturdy wagon, 2 good horses, tools, seeds, and provisions for the journey ahead. According to the map, we should reach Millbrook Valley by evening, Renlo said, consulting the papers spread across her lap. She traded her fancy dresses for practical travel clothes, and her hands were already showing calluses from helping. With the camp chores, you're not having second thoughts? Kestrel asked, though he'd stopped worrying about that after the first week on the road. Renlo had adapted to trail life with remarkable grace, never complaining about the hard ground or simple meals. Only about whether we packed enough coffee, she replied with a grin. I never realized how much I'd grown to love it until we ran short yesterday. They'd been following rumors of available land in Colorado Territory, places where a man with strong hands and determination could stake a claim and build a life. The government was offering homestead grants to anyone willing to work the soil for 5 years. 160 acres, Renlo mused, reading from a newspaper they'd picked up in the last town. All we have to do is prove we can make it. Productive all? Kestrel laughed. Have you ever tried to grow crops in virgin soil? It's back-breaking work and there's no guarantee of success. Then we'll break our backs and take our chances, she said cheerfully. Besides, I have faith in you. I've seen you coax life from barren ground before. She was referring to the small garden he'd maintained behind the bunkhouse, growing vegetables to supplement their meager rations. It had been a small thing, but it had kept several men from malnutrition during the lean months. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they crested a hill and saw their destination spread out below them. Millbrook Valley was a green paradise nestled between snow-capped peaks, with a clear river winding through meadows thick with wildflowers. A small town occupied the valley floor, its buildings looking prosperous and well-maintained. "It's beautiful," Renlo breathed. "It is," Kestrel agreed, but he was looking at her face, not the valley. They made camp just outside town and went in the next morning to file their claim. The land office was run by a friendly man named Josiah Brightwater, who explained the requirements and helped them select a promising tract near the river. "Good water, good soil, and close enough to town for supplies," he said, marking their claim on the official map. "You folks seem like the sort who'll make a go of it." "We intend to try," Kestrel said. "That's all anyone can do out here. Try hard and hope for the best." As they walked through town afterward, Renlo slipped her arm through Kestrel's. Several people nodded politely, and a few women smiled at her in welcome. It was a good sign for Frontier. Communities could be suspicious of strangers, but this one seemed open and friendly. "We'll need to find a place to stay while we build," Kestrel said practically. "Already taken care of," Renlo replied. "I spoke to Mrs. Henderson at the general store while you were talking to Mr. Brightwater. She has a room above the store. We can rent by the week. You work fast." "I learn from the best," she said, squeezing his arm. "You taught me that sometimes you have to move quickly when opportunity appears." That evening, as they sat on their new land watching the sun set behind the mountains, Kestrel marveled at how far they'd come. Just a month ago, he'd been a man with no future, trapped in a life of servitude. Now he owned land, had money in his pocket, and most incredibly of all, he had Renlo by his side. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, noticing his contemplative mood. "Just ... How impossible this would have seemed a few weeks ago. All of it. The best things in life usually do seem impossible until they happen," she said. "My grandmother used to tell me that miracles are just everyday occurrences wearing disguises." "Your grandmother was a wise woman." "She was. I think she would have liked you." Renlo leaned against his shoulder. "She always said I should find a man who would fight for me, not just with me, and have you," he asked softly. "Oh yes," she said, turning to face him in the gathering twilight. "I found him, and I'm never letting him go." The next morning, they broke ground on their new home. Kestrel had designed a simple but sturdy house that would grow with their needs. 2 rooms to start, with space to add more later, Renlo proved. Surprisingly adept with hammer and nails, and several neighbors stopped by to lend a hand. "Tradition around here," explained Ezra Tompkins, a grizzled rancher who'd been in the valley for 15 years. "We all help each other because we know what it's like to start with nothing." "We appreciate the kindness," Kestrel said. "But don't mention it. Just pass it on when the next settlers arrive." By the end of their first week, the house's frame was up, and the roof was on. They'd made friends, established credit at the store, and even received an invitation to the church social. "I think we're going to be happy here," Renlo said one evening as they shared a simple supper in their nearly finished home. "I think you're right," Kestrel agreed, "though I'd be happy anywhere, as long as I'm with you. If we fail at farming, even then, we'll find another way to make it work." She smiled and reached across their makeshift table to take his hand. "Promise me something? Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, we'll face it together. No more noble sacrifices or trying to protect me from difficult choices." "I promise," he said solemnly. "We're partners now, in everything." "Partners," she agreed, raising her cup of coffee in a toast. "I like the sound of that." 6 months later, their small farm was thriving. The house had grown to 4 rooms, with a proper kitchen and a workshop where Kestrel crafted furniture to sell in town. Renlo had established a vegetable garden that was the envy of their neighbors, and their first crop of corn and wheat was coming in strong. But it was on a cold October morning that their resolve was truly tested. Kestrel was splitting wood behind the house when he saw riders approaching. His blood froze as he recognized the lead figure, Bartholomew Crane, somehow free and looking for revenge. 4 hired guns flanked him, their hands resting casually on their weapons. Renlo Kestrel called softly toward the house. "Company. Coming. Take the rifle and get to the back room." She appeared in the doorway, took one look at the approaching riders, and understood immediately. But instead of retreating, she stepped outside to stand beside her husband, shotgun in hand. "I said get inside," Kestrel said urgently. "We're partners, remember?" she replied calmly. "Partners don't abandon each other." Crane reined his horse to a stop 20 feet away, his pale eyes glittering with malice. "Well, well, the lovebirds have made themselves a cozy little nest. What do you want, Crane?" Kestrel asked. "What do I want?" Crane's laugh was ugly. "Want back the life you stole from me. Your testimony put me in prison for 8 months. Do you know what 8 months in a federal prison does to a man of my station?" "Not nearly enough, apparently," Renlo said coolly. Crane's face darkened. "You should have married me when you had the chance, my dear. It would have saved everyone a great deal of trouble. I'd rather die than be your wife. It can be arranged," one of the gunmen said, his hand moving toward his pistol. "Easy, Vance," Crane cautioned. "We don't want to make this too quick. I've been planning this reunion for months." "The war's over, Crane," Kestrel said. "Your kind of business is finished. Find something honest to do with your life." "Honest?" Crane spat. "You think what you did was honest? Turning against your betters? Stealing another man's intended bride?" "Stole nothing. Renlo made her own choice. Women don't make choices. They're property to be bought and sold like any other commodity." Crane's smile was reptilian. "Fortunately, I found buyers for this particular piece of merchandise." Kestrel's grip tightened on his axe handle. "You're not taking her anywhere, really? 5 against 2, and you think you can stop me?" Crane gestured to his men. "I've brought specialists, Thorn. Men who enjoy their work." That's when Renlo surprised everyone by laughing. 5 against 2? You must not have been counting correctly. From the nearby trees, the distinctive sound of rifle bolts being worked echoed through the morning air. Ezra Tompkins stepped into view, followed by Josiah Brightwater and 3 other neighbors. All were armed and grim-faced. "Actually," Ezra said conversationally, "it's 5 against 7. And we know this territory better than you do." Crane's confidence wavered. "This is none of your concern. You're threatening our neighbors," Josiah said. "That makes it our concern." "Besides," added Mrs. Henderson, appearing with a scattergun that looked older than she was, "we don't much care for men who think women are property. It's an outdated notion." Crane looked around at the circle of hostile faces and realized his situation had deteriorated rapidly. "You can't protect them forever." "Maybe not," Kestrel said, stepping forward. "But I can protect them from you. Right. Here, right now. Just you and me, Crane. No guns, no hired killers. Settle this like men. Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not a common brawler." "No, you're a coward who hides behind other men's violence." Kestrel set down his axe and began walking toward Crane's horse. "Get down and face me, or ride out and never come back." Crane's pride warred with his survival instincts. Around them, the townspeople waited in tense silence. Finally, his arrogance won out. He dismounted and stripped off his coat, revealing expensive clothes completely unsuited for physical confrontation. "This is foolish," he said, raising his fists awkwardly. "I'll destroy you in court afterward." "We'll have to survive first," Kestrel replied. The fight was brief and brutal. Crane might have been wealthy, but Kestrel had been hardened by years of manual labor and the memory of every lash he'd endured. Crane threw wild gentleman's punches while Kestrel methodically dismantled him with precise, devastating blows. It ended with Crane face down in the dirt, groaning and bleeding from his nose and mouth. "Now listen carefully," Kestrel said, kneeling beside the fallen man. "You're going to mount your horse and ride out of this valley. If you ever come near my wife again, if you even think about bothering her, I'll hunt you down and finish what I started here today. Do you understand?" Crane nodded weakly, all his arrogance beaten out of him. "Can't hear you," Kestrel said. "I understand," Crane mumbled through swollen lips. "Good, now get out of my sight." Crane's hired guns helped him back onto his horse. Their earlier confidence completely evaporated. As they rode away, Vance called back, "This ain't over, Thorn." "Yes, it is," Renlo said clearly. "And if you're smart, you'll keep riding until you reach the next territory." As the dust settled, their neighbors gathered around, clapping Kestrel on the back and congratulating him on the victory. "How did you know to come?" Renlo asked Ezra. Young Tommy Henderson was out checking his rabbit snares and saw them riding. In, Ezra explained. He ran to town and spread the word. We figured you might need some backup. We're grateful, Kestrel said. All of you. That's what neighbors do, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. We look out for each other. Spring arrived. In Millbrook Valley, with an explosion of wildflowers and new beginnings, Kestrel and Renlow's farm had weathered its first winter successfully, and their second planting promised to be even better than their first. Word had spread that Crane had left the territory entirely, headed back east with his tail between his legs. But the real joy came on a warm morning in May, when Renlow woke her husband before dawn with urgent whispers. Kestrel, Kestrel, wake up. He sat up immediately, instantly alert. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Everything's right. The baby's coming. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. They'd been hoping for this news for months, and when it finally came, it seemed too wonderful to be real.
Are you sure?
Very sure. She squeezed his hand. You'd better ride for Mrs. Carmichael. Mrs. Carmichael was the valley's midwife, a competent woman who'd delivered half the babies in 3 counties. Kestrel threw on his clothes and was saddling his horse within minutes, his heart hammering with equal parts joy and terror. Don't you dare have this baby without me, he called as he mounted up. I'll do my best to wait, Renlow called back, laughing despite the pain. The next 12 hours were the longest of Kestrel's life. He paced outside the bedroom like a caged wolf, while Mrs. Carmichael worked with calm efficiency. Several neighbor women had arrived to help, turning their small house into a hub of purposeful activity. First babies take their time, Ezra told, him having stopped by with coffee and moral support. My eldest took near 18 hours to make his appearance. 18 hours? Kestrel's face went pale. Of course, he's been taking his sweet time about everything since, Ezra added with a grin. Some things never change. Just as the first light of dawn was painting the mountains gold, a new sound joined the bustle in the house, the thin, outraged cry of a newborn baby. You can come in now, Mrs. Carmichael called. Kestrel entered the bedroom on unsteady legs. Renlow lay propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, but her face radiant with joy. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. Come meet your son, she said softly. Kestrel approached as if walking on sacred ground. When he looked down at the baby's face, so small, so perfect, so completely helpless, something fundamental shifted inside him. This was what he'd been born for, not just to love Renlow, but